Senator Hanson-Young. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for coming today. As many of you will know, I've been raising the water issue in the Murray-Darling Basin since 2017, early 2017, when I first found out what was happening in southern Queensland and northern New South Wales. I'm currently working my way through the whole Murray-Darling system, listening with farmers and stakeholders who know what the problems are. Recently, the Minister for Water Resources, Drought, Rural Finance, Natural Disaster and Emergency Management, and I don't know, Senator Canavan, whether that Minister for Drought is for causing the drought or for fixing the drought. But anyway, Minister Littleproud said on the 17th of September 2019, quote, "Water storage in Queensland has dropped from 2.78 megalitres to 1.75 megalitres per person, and said there has been no water storage planning or thinking." Sorry. Now, we know that, but that comment from Minister Littleproud has shocked a lot of people.
Could you just repeat that quote? Sorry, Senator.
Water storage in Queensland has dropped from 2.78 megalitres per person to 1.75.
Yep.
So my question is to the staff here is that everyday Australians who are concerned about our country and our farmers would like to know if this shocking position has changed since 17th of September, and if so, how?
Well, Senator, I might just start. The figures you have referred to and quoted is the very reason why the government is focused on building dams and water infrastructure. It is a well-established fact that when we came to government 6 years ago, there had not been much work done on developing, designing, planning for dams for probably a generation. And so that's why on coming to government, we've invested a significant amount in bringing back up to speed those proposals and plans. I think something in the order of $1 billion, although officials will confirm that, has now been expended to get cracking on building dams and water infrastructure. And now that those plans, those initiatives are starting to bear fruit, with the recent announcements of water infrastructure in rural New South Wales, and Wyangala and Dungowan, the previous funding allocations to water infrastructure projects in Queensland, in Rookwood Weir, at Emu Swamp, the Hughenden Irrigation Project, and the Big Rocks Weir, which is part of the Hells Gate project as well. So things are moving on, and this is the first time in a generation a government has taken seriously the building of dams and turning around the figures that you have quoted that concerned us 6 years ago. We quoted similar figures on coming to government 6 years ago, and that's why we're seeking to turn it around.
I'm just concerned because two of the dams you mentioned were implied as being new dams when they're just extending old dams. And we've got to get away from misrepresenting the reality. We're still fiddling with water. We're not getting serious about it. We haven't got a vision in this country for a complete water system. I asked what has been done.
Well, Senator, I'm interested.
What is actually happening?
The government's interested in the outcomes, obviously, and the outcomes are additional water infrastructure, additional water supplied for farmers, for communities, for industrial development in our nation. So we're not ideological about a particular type of investment here. Well, if increasing and the capacity of an existing dam can deliver those outcomes in higher water at a good cost, at a reasonable price, we'll back those. Likewise, we've invested in a lot of irrigation modernisation programs, pipeline extensions, etc. They too can make a big difference. So we're focused on the result, which is more water for people and for farmers and for communities. Obviously, building dams, new dams, is a way to do that, but expanding existing dams sometimes can be just as good, if not a more cost-effective way of doing that.
Minister, you've actually said, okay, that's dropped from 2.78 down to 1.75. When will it be up to that 2.78? What period of time are we looking at? You must have an idea when you will be back up to that 2.78. With increasing population into the country, that's a lot of water infrastructure you are going to have to put into place. So at what point of time do you expect to have it back up to what it was?
I don't have those figures in front of me, Senator, except I'll say that I don't believe, unless I'm corrected, I'm representing the Minister here, but I don't believe the government's targeting a particular level there. We obviously look at our country's water needs on a case-by-case basis and a community-by-community basis and the opportunities we have. The trend, as you've identified, is one we're concerned of and seeking to rectify, but each individual water infrastructure project has to be judged on its own merits and stack up for the Commonwealth, for the communities, and a payoff for our country.
You've mentioned water projects. Just last question because I want to.
You're right.
You've mentioned water projects. One project in particular, and I know I have spoken to the Prime Minister about it, is Colston Lakes. Now, you've got the dam there, you've got Paradise Dam, you've got only 11% of that water is being used. There's over 100,000 gigalitres in it. Only 11% is used. It requires pipeline to be built, on an average about 35 kilometres of pipeline to be built. Is that in your planning stages to get water to Colston Lakes, which is the town estate in Biggerton? The community there, a great farming community, best agricultural land and possibly in the state or the country, and this does not have water. Is that on your agenda to get the pipeline built?
I'll have to ask officials. I'm aware of those projects, and we're all surprised and shocked at the decisions of the Queensland Government in regards to Paradise Dam in recent months, but I'm not sure about the Colston Lakes project in particular. I might ask Dr Bacon if there's anything to add there.
Rachel Bacon, Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Cities and Regional Development. So, as you know, Senator, the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund does have a total of $1.5 billion allocated to it to fund water infrastructure projects around the country. And in relation to the Colston Lakes project, my understanding is that an additional $1.5 million from the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund will be provided to ensure the benefits of the Colston Lakes irrigation pipeline proposal are comprehensively investigated as part of the North and South Burnett feasibility study.
I'm aware of that, but you also gave the state government $2 million 18 months ago for a feasibility study done. Nothing has been done about it, and I feel that this letter I received this week from the Prime Minister for an extra $1.5 million is an appeasement. So after 18 months of $2 million being put into a feasibility study, another $1.5 million, I don't believe it's good enough when the farming sector and a farmer there has gone down from producing he was producing 150 tonne of peanuts down to 40 tonne. Farmers are leaving the areas, they can't water their crops and the costs. So,
Yeah, is there a question, please?
All right.
Thank you. Now, Senator Roberts?
I'll leave it back to
Can you tell us specifically what is going to happen with water as a national crisis unfolds in the Murray-Darling Basin? What have you got specifically to build in the way of extra infrastructure?
Well, I'll ask officials perhaps to go through more of the detail, but as I mentioned briefly there earlier, the government has announced significant investments in regional New South Wales in the Murray-Darling Basin, Dungowan and Wyangala. Also looking alongside that alongside that announcement, there was an allocation of funding to do the business case or work towards the Mole River Dam as well, near Tenterfield. The Emu Swamp Dam that we've already allocated $42 million for, and welcome now the Queensland Government's commitment to that dam is again in the Murray-Darling Basin, the Southern Downs near Stanthorpe. We've invested in a range of programs in the Southern Murray system, particularly around pipelines around the Murray River to increase water security there. But I might ask, is it Dr Bacon? You'd be best placed to go through some more of the detail there in that area.
Yes, so as I mentioned, we have the $1.5 billion National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, and we've now committed $1.48 billion from that fund, and that is to fund capital infrastructure for 21 water infrastructure projects, and so that those projects are underway. So we're happy to provide details
Could we get
in
details
relation to some of those projects
in
if that
writing,
would
just a
be
list?
useful. So we're happy to take that on notice, Senator. Yes.
Thank you. Another issue is the issue of complexity of water management. Can you tell us whether, my question is to the Water Division, can you tell us whether yours is the only managing stakeholder for water?
Sorry, Senator, can you repeat that?
Can you tell us if the Water Division is the only division managing water?
Do you mean managing water assets that the Commonwealth owns, or water policy, or?
I mean,
or investment in water
I'd like to
infrastructure?
know if the Water Division has responsibility for water and is the only agency managing the water.
Well, we might
A whole lot.
maybe Mr Thompson could just outline, I think he might have earlier today, about the different functions across government, because there's a range of things we do in the water space, and he might be able to give a...
It's the complexity
rundown
that's
on-
bothering me as well.
Right, yeah.
So many people interfering with each other. It's a nightmare for people on the ground to understand what's going on.
So, Senator, the Water Division in our department, which I mentioned earlier, will be joining colleagues who are responsible for water infrastructure in the Department of Infrastructure at the end of this year. But the Water Division in Agriculture is responsible for national water policy matters and a number of water issues outside of the Murray-Darling Basin, including those interjurisdictional basins, the Great Artesian Basin and the Lake Eyre Basin. So we're involved in working with the Commonwealth Government and the states to help manage and plan for those resources. And also, as we touched on before, the on-farm emergency water infrastructure program. So that's a drought-initiated program. But we're also specifically responsible for policy and program spending to recover water to address over-allocation in the basin, in the Murray-Darling Basin. So we have that responsibility, and in that we work very closely with our portfolio agency, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. And the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and ourselves also work very closely with Ms Swiripik in the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder, who is responsible for using the water that we recover. So while it is complex, and no one would pretend that it isn't a complex management arrangement, we work very closely with colleagues across those agencies to deliver good outcomes in the basin.
My concern with the complexity is that it fractures accountability and creates inefficiencies. And I'm not advocating a national body. The last thing I would do is advocate a national body.
Well, Senator, that perhaps, you know, I mean, I am only representing the Minister here and can't extol on all of the rationale and discussions that might have occurred, but clearly the government is consolidating those water responsibilities in the Department for Infrastructure, and I presume, at least in part, that's to consolidate those responsibilities and make sure it's very clear about the direction of the Australian government.
Will we ever?
Mr. Glyde, I think, might want to add.
Senator, as you were hearing at another Senate inquiry last week, it's not just the Commonwealth that's involved in this, of course. There is the states who have constitutional responsibility for water, and in the interest of time, we'd be happy to provide you a briefing with in terms of the history and the background to all of the water regulation that occurs across the Murray-Darling Basin, because it is a complex story, and it's something that Mr Kilty, the Interim Inspector General of Water, has pointed to as well.
We'd welcome that, so our officers can be in touch to sort that out. So we're not going to get any detailed planning for an overall vision yet.
Well, I reject that characterisation, Senator Roberts. As I said earlier, we can. Well, I don't.
No, I'm talking about a vision for the whole country.
Well, Senator, I mean, look, you can make your own conclusions, but I would.
Two upgrades of a dam is not a vision for the country.
Well, sorry, if you let me answer. The government before the election, going back many years, but just more recently, the Deputy Prime Minister has outlined the initiative to establish a national water grid authority. Under that was very much a vision to replumb Australia, if you like, to invest more in water infrastructure right across our country, to connect up different regions in our country to improve water security. Alongside that was the creation of the North Queensland Water Infrastructure Authority as well, to help oversee and drive the development of the extensive water infrastructure initiatives we're making in North Queensland. That builds, the National Water Grid Authority builds on the previous government announcements to establish the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, which has been referred to here this morning, and goes back before we were in government, when we announced plans to build dams across Australia, and as I say, change the direction of governments across the country. Now, it has taken us time. As I said, when we came to office, there really hadn't been any planning done for a generation, so we had to, and I was involved, we had to pick up documents that were gathering cobwebs in various old Department of State developments, etc., around the country. But we've done that work, and I think we'd also played a leadership role in bringing state governments along on this journey as well. And I welcome the support we've received from the New South Wales government in the past month, and also much kicking and screaming, the Queensland government at different times have also partnered with us on some projects. So I think the leadership role the Commonwealth has played here has delivered results, but we still have a lot more to do.
Well, I would see results in terms of having a visionary plan for the whole country and then actually dams built. Because
Senator Roberts, is this a question?
Yes.
Last question.
Well, I might just,
please.
yeah, Dr.
My
Bacon.
question then is the National Water Grid Authority mentioned Dr. John Bradfield. That's something that Senator Hanson has been raising for decades, and I've been raising ever since I got into Parliament. We're pleased to see that. What I would like to know is there a vision for the whole country?
Well, I might ask Dr. Bacon, I think, had something to add on the National Water Grid Authority and that vision, so I'll pass it over.
Thank you, Minister. So I might just outline quickly the objectives of the National Water Grid Authority that was announced by the Deputy Prime Minister on the 14th of September. So the objectives of the authority are to commission science agencies to identify opportunities, and this is across the nation, for increasing the security and reliability of Australia's water supply. Secondly, to develop a pipeline of priority water infrastructure projects, and that will involve working closely with states and territories on an investment framework and delivery of the water infrastructure projects in that pipeline of projects. And thirdly, the commitment is to follow through on the Commonwealth's commitments for the infrastructure projects that we have committed to and invested in that are in that pipeline of priority projects. So all in all, it's about building the right infrastructure in the right places that will support the economic and social outcomes of regional communities that rely on that water supply.
Yeah, and my point is, Senator Canavan, that people in Australia, not just in the bush but in the city, are tired of high-vis vests and safety glasses and hard hats. They want to see what is being done to do good, not just look good. And we need to get on with it.
Well, look, Senator, I think I've gone through at length the various projects we are building around the country. Unfortunately, it does take time to build something as large as a dam. We're just fortunate, I think, that on the re-election of the government, we're here to continue to drive that, and progress is being made.
Well,
Thank you, Senator
I would just
Roberts.
raise one point with Senator Canavan, and that is that a good friend of mine was meeting with a senior Liberal who is no longer in politics, and he asked him, why didn't you build dams 10 years ago? And he said, because there's no crisis then. As good governance, we've got to anticipate the future, and this drought will end, just like every other drought has ended. But we can't then just rest. We've got to make firm commitments now and get on with the job.
Thanks, Senator Roberts.